Police need help identifying a motorcyclist who escaped their pursuit last night and faces a number of charges. Officers say they tried to pull over the reckless driver around 8:30, but they decided the driver now decided to flee through the village limits into the town of Winneconne. Officers decided to end the chase due to their high speed. Anyone who recognizes the person or the bike is asked to contact Winneconne police.